Hello, what an honour. I'm Sal. 5 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism. And at the time, I had no idea what a journey that was going to be for me, both as a parent, which I did kind of know, but also for me personally. Up until that point, my mental image of somebody autistic was very much like, I think, a lot of people's, the character that Dustin Hoffman played in Rain Man. And what I came to realise over time was that an autistic person can look absolutely like me. So as a parent, I decided to look into all the best ways I could support my son. I read every book that I could on autism. I watched every podcast I possibly could. I went on training courses. And the more I looked into it, and the more I read, and the more I heard people talk, the more I thought, this all sounds very familiar. And I started to see that the traits that I was reading about were traits that I recognised within myself, and that the things, the differences were differences that I had too. Initially, that started off with me just having an inkling, and then I took a couple of tests online, for which I got what I considered to be like phenomenally, amazingly high scores. And then eventually, I approached a world expert in late diagnosed autism in women who lives in Australia, who confirmed that I am indeed autistic. So I really want to take this opportunity to talk about really showing up, me really showing up, and to hope that I can change the image that's in all of your minds when you think about somebody that's autistic. I'm married, I've got a family, I've got a successful career in tech, and I'm pretty sure, when I think about it, that a lot of the really successful endeavours that I've been a part of have been, at least in part, successful because of the differences of the people involved in them rather than the similarities. I'm almost certain it's those differences and the support and acceptance that we've had of each other that's made it so special. And I'm not just talking about autism, of course, gender, race, age, orientation, maybe just whether you're a bit more of an introvert or a bit more of an extrovert, whether you're somebody who thinks really quickly on the spot or whether you're a bit more of a contemplator who likes to really think things through. We know from the research as well that diverse groups routinely outperform groups where everybody's the same. And yet, astonishingly to me, it seems like we're still creating environments, processes, organisations that reward, support, and select for sameness. Let me give you some examples. So here's an example of a place where I worked for a couple of days a month for a few years, doing some consultancy. And personally, when I work in places like this, very brightly lit, kind of modern office buildings, and I'm surrounded by people all day doing very communicative stuff, that's incredibly tiring for me personally. So I have to go home at the end of the day or go to my hotel room at the end of the day and lie in a dark room and not speak to anybody to sort of recharge and gather up enough energy to go back into work and survive another day. This is Zoe in the picture, a friend of mine. Zoe's not autistic, she's neurotypical, but I think is indicative of the kind of spaces that we create. That the lights are so bright in this office, Zoe gets migraines, and even wearing sunglasses isn't enough to help. And her team have had to make her a visor out of Post-it notes so that she can properly concentrate in that environment, which just seems crazy. Another example, I had to go to Las Vegas for work. And my husband was really concerned about me. He was worried that, he kept saying, is somebody going to be with you? Because he was worried that I'd be found kind of curled up in a little ball, completely unable to function amongst kind of lots of freak machines and noise and screens and craziness, and I'd have to be rescued. And I also hear this a lot in organisations. I hear, we recruit people for cultural fit. And every time I hear it, it makes me wince. Because cultural fit can often be a masked way of saying, I want to recruit people who are just like me. And when people see me wince and they go, no, Sal, I didn't mean that we only want to recruit young, white, middle-class, well-educated men, right? Which might be true, but might not. They'll say things like, no, I meant I want somebody cross-functional who's a team player, somebody who likes a challenge, which is still saying, I want somebody exactly like me. Because there are benefits if you think about it. What if somebody's not a team player? Maybe they're the person who's going to have maverick ideas. Maybe they're the person who's going to kind of really highlight all the risks in something and say, are you sure this is what we want to do? Because I've thought of it from the edge cases and the angles, and I've looked at it from different directions, and I really think we need to take a second look. So cultural fit makes me nervous. And an example of where cultural fit hasn't served me well in my life. So a long time ago, in the early 90s, I worked for a very big multinational IT organisation, corporation, if you like. And I was doing pretty well there. Actually, I worked in a small team. There were super smart people. It was a great project. And yet, when it got round to my annual review, my line manager sat me down, and although I'd aced the review, I'd had stellar reports back from peers, and I've done really well. At the end of my review, the manager sat me down and said, well, your review's good, but I don't think you're going to last here because you're just not the right kind of person for here. And at the time, this possibly this is very indicative of how my brain works. I thought, I probably just don't look right. So I wore a suit and tie and shirt to work for the next 2 years in the hope that that would make me fit in, not realising that actually it was the fact that I have no interest in office politics, that I have a flagrant disrespect for hierarchy, well, lack of respect for sure, and possibly even slightly that I used to sometimes leave work, get in the car and go and play bass guitar in a goth metal band, which for a very formal tech environment didn't really work too well. So I think we need to be really, really careful with cultural fit. And I think even if we're in organisations and teams where we think, actually, we're doing pretty well at this diversity thing when we look at our team compared to the rest of the world, there is actually a known cognitive bias that means we'll think that way. It's called out-group homogeneity bias. What a fabulous name. Okay. So if at any point you're thinking, oh, we're really diverse, it's the rest of the world that's got a problem, you're very likely to be wrong. Okay, so we see differentness amongst ourselves more than we see differentness out there in the world. And I want to now talk about some hopeful experiments. I got to asking, what would happen then if I really showed up? What would happen if I really showed up vulnerably, authentically, autistically me? What would happen then? And this is Jamie. Jamie has been so inspiring to me on this journey. This is Jamie Knight, most commonly known as Jamie and Lion, because that's a cuddly lion that Jamie takes everywhere with him. Jamie is a senior accessibility specialist at the BBC. He has code that runs on pretty much every web page for the BBC. He's got code that runs in space. He's recently, just as a little side project, put together with him a system with his friend that sort of sniffs out financial fraud, just as a bit of a side thing. That's been hugely successful. Jamie carries Lion everywhere with him. He's under no illusions that Lion is sentient. He just says it's a great prop. So if there's an awkward social interaction and somebody wants to give me a hug and I really don't really actually want a hug, I just give them Lions a hug instead. And that helps really well. Lion's even got a job title at the BBC. He's like in antelope control or something. He's got an actual job title, which is amazing. So Jamie's autistic. He spent a lot of years, like many autistic people, masking his autism, really kind of like shutting it all away. And he got very ill from doing that and decided that he was going to experiment with being autistically happy. What would that look like, being autistically happy? And so now he has Lion with him all the time. He's done some amazing things with technology to support his life as well. So he's done things like set up a proximity alert on his watch because he's not very good at telling how hot or cold liquids are, and sometimes he burns himself. So he set up a proximity alert. As he walks towards his favourite cafe, his watch will ping and say, Jamie, hot things are hot. And he'll go, oh yeah, better not drink my coffee too quickly. So he's set up all this amazing technology around him to support him. And I've set up experiments too. So I'm very lucky. I work for an organisation that is entirely distributed. This is my working environment. It's in my house. My desk is, I think it's called an armoire. Like, it looks like an old-fashioned wardrobe when it's all closed up. And I open the doors either side and pull out the little desk bit. And I feel really, really comfortable there because it feels nice and safe. I've got a curtain that I can open or close, so I can change the light. I can open it and see the trees, but if they distract me too much and make me giggle, I can close the curtain again. I've got a chair that's just this amazing velvet material that's really calming to touch. And I've got all kinds of props around me. I can see, even there, you can see I've got a like really strongly scented peppermint tea that I love the smell of. And all of these things help me work and help me concentrate. And one of my very favourite things about my working environment is that when we have a break, I can turn the screen off and the people just go away. I can have a proper break compared to most working environments that you see where the breakout spaces are open plan too, and there are things that you can do together as activities, like ping pong, which is great because it's a nice, calming, repetitive activity, but it's not so great because you can't really do it on your own. So I really, really, really like those things. And for me, one of the amusing parts of this setup that I have for work is that I spent a lot of my time in the early days of agile software development going into organizations saying, break down the cubicles, break them down, collaborate. And now I've built a cubicle in my own house. Oops. This is the second experiment that I wanted to tell you about. So about 3-4 weeks ago, I went to my first ever hackathon. So I've just started technical hands-on programming again after many years away from doing that kind of thing. And I went to Hack Manchester. My wonderful friend Claire Sudbury organised a group of us at Hack Manchester. So this is Hack Manchester. As you can see, it's probably not my favourite environment. Big, open plan, very noisy, predominantly young white males, you know, very, like, it's a 25-hour hackathon because it's over the daylight saving day. So the idea is we stay up all night, you know, loads of energy drinks and all that kind of stuff, very hardcore. And this is my team. We didn't really match any of the other teams. So this is my team, all women, 2 of us autistic, 2 of us significantly older than the general demographic, I'd say. My hair didn't fall out because of the hackathon, but I had a bit more hair the other week. And we had a very different approach. So what we tried to do was, what would happen if we turned self-care up to 11? How would that be? And we decided, Luce, actually, so they're Luce, Cynthia, and Claire. Luce decided it was really important for her to sleep. So we went, oh, brilliant idea, we'll all sleep. So I booked into a hotel, and some other people live nearby, so they didn't need to. But we worked out who are the early birds, who are the people who like to stay up late. About 9 o'clock, the early birds left, went and had some sleep. I lasted till about 1:30, I think, and then I went off and had some sleep. Claire, who cannot put a problem down once she started on it, left about 4. The earliest person was back about 5:30, so there was only about an hour when no one's eyes were on the code. and yet we're all working like super refreshed all the way through. We also, taking inspiration from extreme programming and other agile techniques that we've all loved for a very long time, worked in an hourly cycle where every hour we'd work for 45 minutes. We'd have 5 minutes going, oh, come and see, this is really cool. What should we change next hour? And then we'd have a 10-minute break where we just went away from our desk, got a cup of tea or a bit of breath of fresh air, or just weren't with people. Very, very different approach to most people who were there with sleeping bags daring each other to stay up the longest. And yet I'm delighted to say we were the first ever all-female team to win Hack Manchester's Best in Show. And I really liked when, so I wasn't home for the award ceremony. I had to go home for my children, so I wasn't there. But the person who gave the award said, this isn't because they're women, it's just because they're awesome developers. And I love that he said that, but I have to wonder if the thing that differentiated us might not have been just a little bit that we turned the slightly more female trait stuff, like caring about each other and caring about ourselves, up to 11. So my challenge to you, as I say, I try now to really show up, authentically, vulnerably, autistically show up. And I would like to invite you all to join the experiment. Please let's start to create environments and companies where people can show up fully, even if that means not showing up in person all the time, where people can, where we make spaces that provide alternatives for people, and where we support each other to be who we need to be, to do the best work and be the best we can possibly be. Thank you.